This meeting is being recorded.
Greetings and welcome to Mount Olympus. I am Hercules Invictus, and today we have our first video issue of Legends of Hercules. Hark and take heed. The saga begins with a fantastic tale shared with a bored and mostly unsympathetic scribe. It is a tale of two gods, Hercules of Olympus and Thor of Asgard, the gods of brutality, best of frenemies sent to rescue a third and quite suspect god, a fallen god, a heavy metal god, from the pits of hell so that he can sing some promised praises to their heavenly fathers, Zeus and Odin. The rescue of Nick Dillon from an infernal cafeteria, where his regenerating body parts are menu items, launches a saga that continues for 3 more issues. I've been following Gods of Brutality since the cover caught my eye while exploring new releases in my favorite comic book shop, and I've since become a fan of the series. And not just because it spins a new yarn about Hercules. In a word, Gods of Brutality is, well, brutal. It does not strive to be politically correct, nor does it avoid creative but colorful language or disturbing imagery. Gods of Brutality lives up to its title, assaulting your senses and sensibilities while drawing you into an entertaining adventure that pulls no punches. It is both an homage and a parody of traditional mythic themes in comic books, mixed in with large doses of heavy metal. Issue number 1 even offers its own playlist of songs that inspired the creators, Rich Woodall and Mark Welser. Playing them while you read or reread the comic adds a whole new dimension to your Gods of Brutality experience. It also has a fun zone page for the inner child in all of us, though this is definitely not in any way a book for kids. If Gods of Brutality was a video game, it would play like the hell levels of Diablo, but with a lot more humor. If it were a movie, I can see it matching Thor Ragnarok in its epic battle scenes, without any of those pesky periods of cinematic inaction that build a story. I enjoyed this comic a great deal and have been reserving subsequent releases so that I don't miss an issue. I recently interviewed Rich Woodall with John Carl Pepe and formed the Gods of Brutality fan club on Facebook. And tonight, we'll get to know Mark Welser, the other member of that creative team, a bit better, and we'll actually be adding some questions from a super fan of the series to our presentation. So without further ado, greetings and welcome, Mark Welser.
Hello, hi, how everybody doing? Great start.
Everybody doing
well. What a great start.
You have an awesome imagination. And you're very creative in your speech, so I'm surprised you didn't pen more of the epic. How did the concept come about?
Well, it was Rich. Rich and I have known each other for a long time, and he's been kind of my biggest cheerleader as far as my art goes. And every once in a while, I'd be like, "We should do a book together. We should do a book together." And we've tried, and nobody was interested. And then I was going to do my own book, but I'm not really a writer, so Rich would always check in to see how my book was doing, and I didn't have any updates. And he'd check in to see how my book was doing, and I didn't have any updates. And he's like, "Well, how about if I just write something for you to draw?" And I said, "All right." And the good thing about Rich is most people, when they come to you to draw their book, they're like, "Here's the idea that I have for a book that I want you to draw." With Rich, was like, "Here's 5 ideas. Tell me if you like one of these. If not, tomorrow I'll come back with 7 more." So he pitched some stuff to me, and he pitched this idea of Thor and Hercules in hell saving this metal guy. And I was like, "Yeah, I like metal. Yeah, let's do it." And that was basically it. I don't know how much he planned ahead of time. Knowing Rich, he can kind of just do this stuff on the fly, not to diminish his creative process, but he could just come up with stuff. He's a wealth of ideas.
Yeah, he seemed like a wealth of ideas. We interviewed him recently, and he was very eloquent, and it was very apparent that ideas flowed easily through him. I'm glad that that one resonated, because you guys have brought us something very, very different. And yes, Thor and Hercules are, you know, a frenemy duo in Marvel. Rich turned me on to Savage Dragon, so now I'm looking at that in Savage Dragon. And you have like another incarnation of them in Gods of Brutality. What inspired you for your versions of Hercules and Thor?
Do you mean like visually or?
Yeah, visually.
Rich actually did a couple sketches that he sent to me initially, and they were loose, but pretty much all the elements were there. He had Thor's helmet and Hercules' bald head. He had spikes everywhere, and I tweaked them and made them a lot more difficult to draw regularly. And I'm very mad that I didn't make it a little easier, because now I'm like, well, how do I draw this stupid costume bits from this angle? But issue 1, it was a lot of me still trying to figure out how to draw them. I think I've got it under control now, but we'll see. But yeah, mostly it was Rich that came up with it, and we kind of bounced stuff back and forth until we were had something that we were happy with. And we were very concerned, because we're both Savage Dragon fans, that we didn't want to have them be too similar to the way Eric does them in his book, more than we were concerned about Marvel, to the point where I think initially Thor was blonde, because we're like, well, Eric's got a redheaded Thor. We don't want to do the same thing. We're like, should probably be a redhead. But that was about it. Yeah, Rich did it, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, it's a very unique interpretation of Hercules. Actor-wise, there was a show called Roar on a long time ago, where they had a strong man who was kind of bald, and I wondered if that played a part in anybody's inspiration. But this is the first time I've seen Hercules bald, I think, in comic books.
Yeah, I don't know. I think Rich was based him on, I can't remember his name now. I'm blanking. He was in Jaws.
Oh, Clint or Flint, the guy with
Quint. It was the actor that plays Quint. But when I do him, I kind of see more of like a Jesse Ventura from the old WWF. But Thor is easy because half of his face is covered, so he could just look like anything under there. Although I did do a sketch of what he looks like without his helmet, so maybe one of these days we'll get to it.
Rich had said that after this series, there's going to be like one on Dracula, and that's going to have plot elements for the next Gods of Brutality adventure. And I was very glad to hear that it was going to continue beyond the 4 issues, because the first 3 came out, the 4th one's coming out, and I was like, oh, yeah. I'm very saddened that this isn't continuing, because again, it's a very unique interpretation of harrowing hell, which is a very powerful mythic motive.
Yeah, once you read issue 4, you'll be like, oh, nothing is over. They didn't wrap anything up. It's just setting up more stuff to come later. So we've got a lot of stuff planned. Whether we get to it or not is another story, but there's always stuff to mine in there, and ideas that Rich and I have been bouncing back and forth. And the Dracula thing, the good thing about Dracula is you don't need to have read Gods of Brutality to enjoy the Dracula book. They're pretty much unrelated. And then once that spills into Gods, I'm not even sure if you would need to read the Dracula book, but it'll help. You know what? Strike that. Buy everything that we do. It's all.
Well, we're gonna cover it in the Facebook group, because there is going to be a gap between Gods of Brutality first series and then when the second series stops. So we'll cover everything you have, and it's become my goal to interview everybody connected with the book.
Oh, great!
In some way. The book seems like a community type of experience. So even though you and Rich are like the main creators, a lot of creativity is flowing into the book, and a lot of people are bringing their own interpretation. So it lends very richness to what you guys are doing.
Yeah, we try to keep things fresh for each other. And even when Rich sends me, well, even before he writes anything, we kind of bounce stuff back and forth. It's very collaborative. He's like, dude, do you want to draw something like this? And I'll be like, yeah. Or he'd be like, would you want to draw something like this? I'm like, no, but I'll give it a shot. whatever. Oh, well, how about this? And how about this? And so it's a lot of collaboration. And then by the time he writes out the plots, it's kind of like a little bit more detailed Marvel method where he'll do page by page what happens, but there's no written dialogue or really beat for beat what happens. A lot of it, I just have to figure out the storytelling and how the pacing is going to go when I draw the pages. And then when I give them to Rich, depending on if I drew the things that he wrote, he will have to decide the dialogue and where that'll go if I left him any room, which sometimes I don't. And so by the time he's lettering it, it's still, I don't know what it's going to be, you know? So it's keeping us fresh pretty much every step of the process.
Yeah, it's very surprising too that that each issue, even though it's part of a continuity, it seems to be an entity in and of itself in terms of the tone of the issue and where it seems to be going. And then there's a lot of surprises on the road along the way.
Yeah, I can't speak for Rich, but he probably would agree that there's a lot of the older books that we used to read where it would be each issue was a story. And then at the end of that issue, that story would be over, and then you go fight some other guy in the next issue, but there'd still be a long running narrative. So instead of like, if someone reads issue 3, they're like, well, I don't know what's really going on, who these people are, what they're doing in the middle of a story. So there's enough in there that you can kind of figure it out. But yeah, I think it's pretty much Monster of the Week, or at least for now it is. And depending on how Rich is going to write it later, I think that we've got some other stuff that we want to have that kind of gets spread out a little bit more. Introduce this here, tease this, and then have it pay off later. But yeah, a lot of it is just, we're just making it up as we go.
I like some of the monsters, like you had demonic Girl Scouts, and you had mobster were ants and mud witches.
Yep.
So Rich comes up with these ideas.
Yeah, he says, oh, we're going to be drawing this. I'm like, all right, Russian were ants, you got it. I think the Girl Scouts may have been his idea too, for that double page spread on issue 1 on the boat. I think he pitched that. But that was originally going to be a 1-page spread, and then I misread it as a double, and so I drew it as 2 pages. Like, Rich, I messed up. I made it 2 pages. Like, it's awesome, so don't worry about it.
It is. That is an awesome page, and it was a lot like Where's Waldo. It was very busy, and looking through all the different creatures on the page was, and then it's like, what are these flying Girl Scout Valkyries?
Right. Yeah, right. Who knows if we're ever going to see them again?
And Timmy, what's the deal with Timmy? I thought he might be a one-shot thing, but then he's mentioned again in number 3 by the people in charge of the Murder Factory.
Yeah, I thought it was a one-shot thing too. When Rich wrote it, it's just like, oh, some little guy tries to eat Nick, and then Thor knocks him out into the stratosphere or whatever. So I just came up with this little guy, and I didn't think it was going to get mentioned again either. So that's what I'm saying. Like, I never know what's going to happen in this book until I read it. But Rich actually let me do the dialogue for Timmy on that page.
Yes, I saw that.
He had written some dialogue initially, and I was like, he's kind of talking a little like broken English. I'm like, we got the Russian guys that speak broken English. We got the demon guys that all talk like dumbasses. So maybe we'll do something else with this guy. So I suggested we have him be more verbose and eloquent. And he thought that was funny, so we went with it. And that's one of the good things with Rich and I too, is because like he'll let me know if I'm not pulling my weight, and then he'll step in like, do this better, and then I'll try to do the same thing, and he'll be like, we don't have time to change it.
And I guess that keeps it fresh and exciting also, and the unpredictability translates well to the page. Because it lends extra excitement to those who are following by reading along or listening to music that you guys picked out to watch as well.
Yeah, it's fun. It's a fun book. It's dumb as hell, but I think it's a lot of fun.
Now, what was your journey like before this book? You're obviously what do you call it, a phenomenal artist. You have your own style. And you're able to take something, an idea, and flesh it out in a way that's interesting and exciting. When were you first interested in drawing, and when did you decide that that would be the path that you're taking?
I think I was born in 1982. So like my first real introduction to comics was those little mini comics that came with the He-Man toys in the 80s.
Yeah.
So that got me reading comics. And then superheroes later. I had an older brother that read comic books. He had a job, so he would be able to go to the comic shop, bring some comics home, and I'd read whatever he had. And then it was, I can't remember when I started drawing, probably since I could hold a pencil. I was always drawing. I was very bad at school because I wasn't paying attention. I was just drawing in my notebooks. And once I got to high school, I started getting into comics again, and I went to the comic shop. I had some money. I said, I'm going to see what looks good. I got $5, and I saw an issue of Savage Dragon 28, and it had Savage Dragon and the Max on it together on the cover. And I said, those are two of my favorite Image books when I was younger. I was still a kid, I guess, but I'll pick this up. And I read it, and I was like, well, I don't know what the hell's going on, but boy, this is crazy. I need to get more into this. And then I just started working my way back on Savage Dragon. And then that just became like my book. And I was so in love with Eric's art. And I said, I want more people to draw like that. So I'm going to start drawing like that. And I aped as much of his style as I could. And then over the years, it kind of became something else. But there's still a lot of Eric Larson in my art. What you said, you started getting some dragon books. I think once you start reading them, you'll see, oh, this looks like a lot like the way Mark draws stuff. That's because I stole it from Eric.
Okay. Your fan had a question that was related to that. I'll ask the questions again later, and you could fill them out. But yeah, that was something that people were wondering. Actually, you guys turned me on to Savage Dragon. I was always aware that it existed, but I was primarily into mythic comics, I guess, and Conan, sword and sorcery.
Yeah.
So I didn't really collect any of the superhero ones unless they had Hercules in them, and sometimes Thor. So I wasn't even aware that they were in Savage Dragon until Rich told me that they were. So I looked on the wiki. I found a page. It had all the issues that he was listed number. Then it's like, all right, I'll slowly start collecting these. And as I started collecting them, I got into them a bit more. It's very different than the other comic books, and I'm really appreciating the humor. I think I'm in my 60s now, so I'm an old man, and I think I'm appreciating it now more than I would have maybe 20 years ago, 30 years ago, when these things were coming out.
Yeah, probably. I mean, I know a lot more people are getting into it now, I think, because Image had this reputation at the time of like all their comics were just junk. But I think Dragon's the one that really kind of stood the test of time.
Yeah, I didn't follow the comic. I remember it came out as a cartoon. I had heard that it came out as a cartoon. I know it came out as some toys from Todd McFarlane.
Yeah, there's a couple of those. Yeah,
but again, that kind of was in the periphery of my awareness until now. Now all of a sudden, it's become a focus. And as I read more of those comics, I see more and more how that inspired you guys. And you took very many good elements from that and introduced it into what you're doing. But still, what you're doing is very unique.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of Eric Larson. I think someone mentioned John Romita Jr., Walt Simonson. It's kind of a mishmash of whatever I'm into at the time. But I think basically it's mostly Eric Larson stuff. And there's some Kirby in there too, but you can't do Larson without Kirby. And a lot of those guys kind of all get back to Kirby anyway.
Yeah, you guys, it's interesting because the comic book is a homage in one respect. In that it definitely nods to, like, I spotted Kirby before I became aware of Larson. There's definitely a lot of nods to Kirby, including the pseudo-Shakespearean way that gods talk, and that whole really dysfunctional dynamic between two really close friends, Thor and Hercules, but it plays out all the time. They're always fighting about things, and their fight will last like the whole issue. So those homages were there. but at the same time, it was a parody in some ways, or at least I perceived it as a parody to those homages. So the book pokes fun as it goes along, and in my perception, it was also poking fun at these sacred comic book institutions. Is that totally in my head, that interpretation, or was that there at all?
It sounds right to me. I don't know. You'd probably have to ask Rich, but probably. I haven't thought about it that much, really. I barely
Okay.
read the book as it is. That's not
A
true.
lot of
No.
a lot of creative people don't like. I know people in TV. I used to have a fringe TV show, and back then I didn't have time to watch my own shows.
Right? Yeah. Well, I think it's probably, I don't know if it was a conscious effort on Rich's part or not, but it certainly ended up to be, taking the gods and spinning them on their head. But I know he always wanted to do something different. He didn't want to do Thor and Hercules doing their "thou hast done this" or whatever. He's like, well, we'll update their dialogue a little bit because it'll be real annoying if they talk like this in every single issue. So he had Zeus and
Odin.
Odin, thank you. Zeus and Odin, they had them talk like that, but I think once they introduced the younger guys, it was like, well, they'll have them curse and
What
give
type
each
of
other insults all the time.
What type of things do you like to draw?
Everything that's in God's Brutality, just dudes punching each other through walls, I guess. It's, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like drawing. I can tell you what I don't like to draw is cars, and I've tried my entire life to get away with not drawing cars. And then Rich sends me the plot for issue 4. He's like, oh, they got a car in this one. I'm like, oh, all right. So I got to find a way to make that look fun. But I think it turned out okay. But it's like every issue is a challenge. You get stuff you've never drawn before, so you got to figure out how to make it work. And hopefully it does. And if it doesn't, hopefully nobody notices.
Well, there's a certain amount of stylized drawing too, so I guess you can get away with it not looking, like life, true to life, because there's a whole feel to the book, and it's the reality that it creates. You had mentioned earlier that you were working on a book. Would you care to share what type of book you were working on?
With Rich, or the one
No,
that I was doing myself?
The one that you were doing.
Well, it never got past the basic premise. So I didn't get very far. I did it was going to be like superhero stuff, super secret agent, whatever. It was not much of an idea, to the point where I just was crippled with, where do I go? How do I even start this? I don't even know how to begin to plot. I've got a basic premise, but nothing. And then Rich is like, I'll write something. This is how you make books. You just start here and then you figure it out later.
Are you involved in any of the other titles with Black Caravan?
Nope. I read some of them, but I don't. I have nothing to do with them creatively. No, nobody would want me to touch their books anyway. I think they're much better in the hands of whoever's doing them now.
As someone who enjoys your artwork, I find that hard to believe. Again, you have your own unique voice, and that's very rare. A lot of people can duplicate things, and but you have a voice, and that takes a while to cultivate.
I think I'm still trying to find it. I don't know if I've quite found it yet, and it's interesting because when you're so close to it, you're like, is any of this stuff making sense together? If somebody saw these drawings of mine, would they know it was me, or would they just think is some drawing? So it's hard for me to really even see my own style sometimes, because I do play stuff up a lot. And I recently did, I don't know, you know what, it's been announced, I can talk about this. There was a Savage Dragon podcast, and recently they celebrated their 10-year anniversary, and they were going to make a comic together, a bunch of short stories from a different bunch of fans, and print it and give it away on the podcast. And I did a short story, but I wanted to draw. I'm like, oh, I'll try my hand at trying to draw like Tim Sale. I'm a big fan of Tim Sale. I've never attempted that style before, so I want to completely do Tim Sale. I don't think I pulled it off, but it looked kind of neat. So I'm always trying to practice different styles. I did a book before that didn't get picked up. Somebody wanted me to do like a Frank Miller Sin City style. So I did a bunch of pages in that style, and it's fun because it keeps things interesting when you're drawing it, keeps it fresh instead of drawing it the same way over and over and over and over for years. Like, oh, how else can we do this that would be different? And maybe I can take some of these elements and use them later. So I think that's experimentation is, I think, keeps artists fresh creatively. And a lot of people they just get in a rut. And it's like, try some more stuff and see how it goes. Maybe it'll suck, but who knows?
Well, that's the good thing about creativity. It's an attempted expression, and sometimes by making what you think is a mistake, you stumble into a new form of self-expression. So it must be an exciting journey for you, getting your artwork out in this way.
Oh, it's fantastic. Yeah. And it's so nice to have your own book out there. But before this, I'd go to shows, I'd set up at shows, and I'd just be selling fan art. And I felt like such a fraud. I'm like, oh, please buy this drawing that I did of Wolverine. Well, I don't care about Wolverine, but now that you have it like your own book, you can market yourself, and it's something that I can actually be proud of. And hopefully someone else will be interested in it too.
Richard said that there were like role-playing game miniatures or board game miniatures coming out of Hercules, Thor, and I don't remember if he said Nick also. And that again, the other series that we talked about, Dracula and Gods of Brutality series 2 are coming out. I can see, you talked about He-Man action figures or the comic books. I can actually see these characters as He-Man-esque action figures with their own little, comic. With parental discretion labels on it, but still, I can see wanting one of those to tack on my wall.
That's funny that you said it, because I don't even know if I can talk about this, but a while ago I did some mock-up like He-Man figures with Thor and Hercules, just to see how they would look in that style, and I thought they looked great. And I sent them to Rich, and I was like, maybe we can do something like this someday. And we're like, we'll see. So there's no plans, but that's something that I would like to see, because that's the kind of toys that I loved. And if we can package a little mini comic in there with it, that'd be fantastic. A little 6-page beat 'em up.
Yeah, that would definitely be different. And you have such an interesting variety of enemies too, that each book would have like a central character at least that would come out during the, with a line.
Yeah, we've always got ideas. And that's how the Dracula thing happened, actually. Was Black Caravan was going to put out a Halloween comic anthology of like a bunch of their different titles they're going to put out, kind of like Free Comic Book Day, but for Halloween they do sometimes. And I really wanted to stick with the Halloween theme. I'm like, we got to do like some Universal monsters, have them fight for a couple pages. And then Rich is like, well, we got to have some kind of twist to it. You can't just have like a mummy and a Frankenstein. It's got to be like a ninja mummy or a cyborg Frankenstein or something. And then I was like, well, Lucha Libre Dracula. And he really liked that idea. And he's like, that idea is too good for a little 5-page story. We're going to have this be the next arc of Gods of Brutality. And he was talking with Joe Schmalke, his partner on Black Caravan. I think it was Joe that was like, you should just have Dracula have his own book. So that we're doing that. So it's going to be eventually connected, but it's like, you're not going to see Thor and Hercules in the Dracula book. It's definitely going to be his story.
So eventually you guys are going to have your own I guess stable would be the correct words, of mythical figures that have your own spin and your own interpretation, that you'll be, so you're building a mythology, a very powerful mythology, and that's really good. You have some traditional mythical figures, and then you're creating your own. Like some of them I Googled, I wasn't sure if you based it on anything that was out there in world mythology, but no, there wasn't anything like that. Even the were ants.
The were ants, yeah.
The ancient Greeks had myrmidons. They were called myrmidones, which means ant people. And Achilles' soldiers were called myrmidons in Homer. And in the mythology, they were originally ants that were transformed by Zeus into warriors. But that's the closest thing I could find. So your were ants were unique. They
So
weren't taken from
we
mythology.
maybe we accidentally stumbled onto something similar, or Rich planned this all along. I don't. Well, I think he originally wanted to be different bugs, and then I was like, oh, I'm too lazy to design them, so they're all going to be ants. I think is what happened. But yeah, maybe we did accidentally, and that's the good thing about this book is like there's anything goes, pretty much anything we want to do. And something that I realized recently was that it doesn't have to make sense.
No.
Like a lot of the earlier stuff when we were setting stuff up, I was like, Rich, how does this work in hell? Like you got these planets, like are they in space? Is it a different dimension? And Rich is like, don't worry about it. Just make cool stuff. And I'm like, well, I guess if the whole thing is Nick telling the story, it doesn't have to make sense. It's all from his perspective. So if it's nonsense, it still kind of works. So that's kind of where my head's at now, as I'm trying to not get bogged down by the dumb details that slow me down. And Rich appreciates that.
In watching YouTube videos about Larson, it seems that Larson, he'll have something like an explanation for a panel pop up like 10 years later, so all these details, even though they might have seemed puzzling or not important at the time, assume some sort of cosmic significance, in some alternate dimension or an alternate timeline. So you could always do that as well. Like if Timmy didn't appear again, Timmy could appear again. In like your 4th or 5th series, and
he could be the big villain at the finale. For all I know, it's I have no idea. I had no expectations for Timmy.
Now
it seems like somebody likes him now, so maybe he'll get his own book. I have no idea.
His own book, yeah.
Right.
And his own mini action figure.
Right. Select all the Timmys.
Yeah, I'm enjoying this conversation. But I have another show after this one, and I promised your fan MC Timmy that I would share his questions. So I should get to this. In the letters of issue number 1, Craig Olson said your illustrations were like Jack Kirby art filtered through an Eric Larson style. Can you shed a little light on how these two creators have affected your own style? You answered this already, but if you want to add to it, that'd be great.
I read a lot of their work, and when you look at a lot of the same guys over and over, it tends to spill into your stuff, and I gravitated towards it. So there was some aesthetics that I really enjoyed, so I stole them, and now I do them too. Not as well as either of them, but they're in there.
Again, the art is in the eye of the beholder as much as in the hand of the creator. So
right, that's true.
Okay, the character designs for all 3 of the main characters, mainly Hercules and Thor, have a lot of dangly park spikes and oddly proportioned armor elements. And you touched on this as well. As the series has progressed and you have drawn the characters from various angles, how much thought has gone into exactly how each spike and such will look from each angle? Do you commit all this information to head, or do you have some sort of 3D reference you use?
I should use 3D reference. Hopefully when these little minifigures come out, I can use those, because a lot of times I mess it up. I know there's especially in issue 1, I'm like, I don't quite know the angle of these spikes, so I'm just guessing. But I think by issue 2, I kind of figured it out. I don't know how to explain how to do it. I guess they all kind of radiate from one vanishing point out, kind of like sun rays, and you draw a little sun when you're a child. But I don't know. I don't have 3D models. I should, but I don't have any. If somebody wants to make some for me, I would use them.
A challenge has been issued, fans. If
Right.
you're able to make 3D models, here you go. Here's your chance to make something useful to a creator.
Yeah, if you figure out how these costumes work in 3D, because I don't know.
Great answer.
Right.
Anybody who knows anything about comics knows that there have been so many different incarnations of Thor and Hercules in the medium. How much influence did you draw from these other versions of the characters, and how much conscious thought was put into not mimicking other interpretations? And you answered this one as well.
Yeah, basically just the problem with doing Thor and Hercules is everybody knows them already, so they're coming in with their own ideas of how they should be, and we just wanted to put our own spin on it. And we want to make it difficult for people to compare them to the other established versions, So when they see Arthur and Hercules, like those are Rich and Mark's Thor and Hercules. Those aren't the real guys. These assholes in Marvel movies, those are a little bit different. So I guess just make sure that they're unique, because otherwise it's boring.
And now we have the concept of multiverses in comics and in comic book movies. So, you can make as many different dimensions as you want. I think Rich said that there's going to be another version of Thor and something coming up that has nothing to do with the Thor.
Oh, his Sergeant Werewolf. Yeah, he's got a Sergeant Werewolf book that he did prior to Gods of Brutality that had a Thor in it. But yeah, they're not the same. But maybe one day they'll meet this Thor from Sergeant Werewolf. I don't know. We could literally do anything because we have no rules. I don't know if I would want any of Rich's dumb characters in this book, but I'm joking. I like Rich's book. When Sergeant Werewolf comes out, everyone should read it.
Are you planning any Easter eggs? This is not from your fan. This is for me. Because Larson does this also. I've discovered by watching YouTube videos by in the corner of splash pages, putting little special guest appearances. And I understand that Larson's Hercules has appeared in Supreme and in Marvel's Thor with his costume, and he was in Capes #1. But Capes #1 is way too expensive to get even in a collected edition. So,
is it expensive now? They're probably out of print then, the trades.
Yeah, because Walking Dead also premiered in that issue. So even the collected archived edition is really expensive right now. So I guess I'll have to imagine that one.
I remember when they came out, I think nobody wanted them, so I grabbed them all up because Mark Engler drew those, and he was a pal at the time. So I think a lot of the connections in comics for me is guys that knew Savage Dragon, even Kirkman. One of my first published works was in a Robert Kirkman Super Patriot book that he wrote. I was friendly enough with him. I was like, hey, if I drew a pinup, could you print it in your book? And he's like, yeah, it's got to look professional and it's got to be 300 400 DPI or whatever. And I had my friend Paul Little color it for me, and we're like, what the hell's a DPI? We didn't know what it was, so we sent it to him, and it was a little fuzzy, but he printed it. And Paul Little, actually, that was 2004, maybe. And Paul Little does the colors for our covers now, starting with issue 2, 3, and 4, and the trade paperback that's coming out. I would like to work some more with Paul. He's really good at coloring. He's done a lot of professional comics coloring in the past 10 or so years. I don't know how long he's been at it, but he's a good guy, and he does good work.
Is the graphic novel just going to be a collection of 1 to 4, or will there be new and original material for it?
We are still figuring that out, I think. Okay. I would love to include more stuff. I know, because in these first 4 issues, I really wanted to put extra stuff in the back of the books as much as I could, just to give people a little extra. If they're paying whatever $4 for this book, give them a little something extra. Have a letters page. A lot of books don't do letters pages anymore. So I want to have some extra stuff. What that will be, I don't know. Maybe just sketches. I don't have a lot of sketches. I throw most of them away.
That's sad.
Yeah, well, and some of them I rework to death. There was one that I was trying to figure out how Hercules was going to look, and I drew him with like the lion skin.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, well, maybe he just has like a skull, like a lion's skull helmet. And I'm like, oh, that doesn't look good. And I just erased it and redrew it, white out all over the place. His arms should look like this. No, I don't like those bracelets. And then by the time it was done, there was like 15 versions that just don't exist anymore. So, and I don't really keep a lot of my sketches. It's mostly just to figure stuff out. And it's not really anything that anyone would want to see. But who knows? I mean, I have some. I know Rich has some of the designs that he did for Thor and Hercules. Initially, those will probably be in there, but extra stuff, I don't know what. I want to put more stuff in it, though. At least a covers gallery.
I like what you have. In addition to the colors gallery, you have the letters, you have the fun zone, you have a shopping club,
right. And
now there's a bunch of little comic strip type cartoons, one of which seems focused on Gods of Brutality. Hercules was in one, Thor was in another one.
Yeah, Gods of, what is it, Brutal IT, it's called? Yeah, they're the IT department at some company. Yeah, the fun zone was my idea. we were putting the book together, and I was originally like, we could do a separate book of like a coloring book / activity book. And then Rich was like, we can't do a whole book of that. He's like, maybe you could do like 1 or 2 pages. We could put it in issue 1 or whatever. So I tossed those together. And Rich was like, I wish you'd spend more time drawing pages instead of mazes, but whatever. And all the pinups and stuff. I love the pinups. I love seeing other people drawing these characters. I think we got a lot of really good pinups. Pardon me. A lot of really good pinups in these books from friends of ours and other professionals, up and comers that I'm just blown away seeing other people's interpretations of these guys. So extra stuff. Yeah, the sales club, I don't think Rich had any idea what I was planning when I started that. I was like, I'm gonna do this thing. He's like, all right, whatever. And then for the issue 4, we've got like a fake fruit pie ad.
I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, hopefully that's funny.
Yeah, there used to be the superhero cake ads. I remember them, the cupcake ads.
Yeah.
So that'd get a laugh from people who remember those comics.
Yeah.
I have one more question by MC Timmy.
Oh, sorry.
Where
MC
did the-
Timmy, go ahead.
I'm sorry?
I didn't mean to cut off MC Timmy.
Oh, okay. Where did the idea for the Demon Girl Scouts come from? You discussed this already too. Was it thought about on a panel, or was it suggested to you by Rich? And you answered that already.
I think that was Rich. Probably was Rich. I know a lot of the other guys. I have the book right here, so I'm going to take a look and see what else is in there. But I think most of the stuff was just stuff that I came up with as I was drawing. I think he was just like demons, Girl Scouts, whatever, just a bunch of weird dudes. Yeah, a lot of it was just made up on the page, but I think Rich came up with the Girl Scouts. So he'll have to tell you what their names are if somebody wants to put together a Gods of Brutality Wikipedia with all these characters. I don't know what their names are.
I'm sure there will be one at some particular
Right.
point in time as you guys move toward the future. I'm going to have both you and your partner back on again around the time the graphic novel comes out, to kind of wrap things up. And in the interim, I'm just putting it out there that I'm interviewing anybody who's been involved with the book in any way. If you know of anybody who'd like to be interviewed, if you could just let them know to contact me, we'll schedule something as soon as we possibly can. And what vision do you have? Like, it's 10 years from now, where do you see your art, and where do you see Gods of Brutality, like in a decade?
Well, I hope that the pages look better than they do now, because if they look worse, then I did something terribly, terribly wrong. Hopefully there is still more Gods of Brutality being produced, because if people lose interest, then we're probably not going to make any more. I would like to see those He-Man toys. I want to see, yeah. I don't know if a movie, everyone's talking about movies, I would maybe an animated series, but I don't know. I'm mostly just focused on the books, making sure the book is the best that it can be. I want Dracula to show up. I've got some ideas that I want to convince Rich to put in the book. And I want to see more covers and more pinups from people drawing these characters. I want to see a spin-off of short stories by other artists. I want someone to give me a break and draw some of these guys. I want to see more art from Rich Woodall. And I don't know, maybe some celebratory ribs and brisket to eat.
Awesome. And you are pursuing your passion and looking to find your voice, as you had said earlier. So you've begun your journey. A lot of people never make it past the stage of doodling. What encouragement would you give to people? Because I'm sure that this is not an easy road.
No.
What encouragement would you give to people to follow their own muse, to follow their own passion?
I would say be friends with Rich Woodall and have him constantly pestering you to draw more things. I mean, I don't know. I think what I've learned was you just got to do it. You can't sit around and wait for the perfect opportunity or wait for the perfect story idea to hit you and try to make everything as perfect. Because I get bogged down by details a lot, but it just do the best you can, make something. And if it sucks, do something else and hopefully it's better. And if that sucks, hopefully the next one's better. And it'll be more comfortable. You'll get faster at it. I'm getting faster. I started off, I was very, very slow getting pages produced, but I think I'm getting a little quicker now. Yeah, I don't know. I think my motto is if you can't get rich making comics, then the next best thing is to make comics with someone named Rich.
I like that.
Yeah.
That is awesome. And how can people find you and follow you and explore your creative work?
I don't have a lot of web presence, honestly. I had a DeviantArt page years ago that I've abandoned. I have an Instagram that I've checked once, mostly just Facebook. That's the place that you can find me consistently talking about cereal that I bought or Saturday Night Live that I'm watching or whatever dumb joke that I think is funny that I wouldn't share. Not a whole lot of art because a lot of stuff I'm just saving for the book, really. Everything that I'm working on is assignment stuff. So once that's done, it'll be, I don't do a whole lot of preliminary stuff online. I should do more, but I don't. But you can find me on Facebook, Mark Welser. Just look for the page that has a lot of Gods of Brutality stuff, and that's me.
Awesome. And one last question. What should we be looking forward to aside from Dracula and Gods of Brutality, trade paperback and series number 2? Anything else we should be looking forward to in the days ahead?
I think that's it. Those little figures, the trade paperback and Dracula and series 2 of God, that's pretty much all I have. If there's anything else planned, Rich hasn't told me.
Thank you very much, Mark. I enjoyed this conversation. I wish it were longer. I'm going to give a quick promo of issue number 2, and I'll have the review up by next week.
Excellent.
So thanks again for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Pleased to be speaking with you.
Yeah.
My pleasure.
I appreciate your enthusiasm for this book. Thank you very much.
And now for a promo for issue number 2. Yay, hark, heed, and take note, my friends. The tale continues with our heroes in strategic retreat. We discover that the underworld has its own underworld, run by brutal mobsters who are also hideous were-ants. Hercules and Thor continue to fight each other as well as the chitinous hordes of hell. Nick finally unleashes his own brutality, activating his warrior soul. But alas, he has not yet found his heroic heart. Would you know more? Good, then I suggest you seek out Gods of Brutality number 2. We'll be reviewing it very soon on our YouTube channel, and in the interim, I invite you to join our Legends of Hercules, Gods of Brutality group on Facebook. Thank you and good night. Thanks again, Mark, you're awesome. And until next time, this is us wishing you joyous journeys and amazing adventures. Good night.